All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Feeling and Healing, podcast. I am honored to welcome Tammy Vincent today. She is a transformational life coach, a best-selling author and speaker. She works with, children of alcoholics from dysfunctional families, who feel unworthy and unloved and unheard, like really step into their power and become the best version of themselves possible. So, thank you, Tammy, for coming on. I appreciate
Thank
you being
thank
here.
you for having me, Danielle. I'm excited. I know we
Yeah,
have a lot to talk
so
about.
yeah, no, I would just love for you to tell the audience because you have such a I think empowering and relatable story. I mean, there's a lot of people out there, and I think we're gonna touch upon my family therapy hat or the family therapist hat that I love to wear. How important the system you grow up in can impact you as a human, as an adult, as a teen, as and throughout your whole life, how it impacts you.
Okay, well, it definitely does. And I
Yeah.
can tell you I've been battling that aftermath for many, many years, but there's good news is there's hope on the end. So, quick story, I'll make it real quick. I grew up,
Yeah,
both
of
my
course.
parents,
No, the floor is yours.
yeah, both of my parents were alcoholics. My mother was also a drug addict. There was mental disorders all throughout. I mean, my mother was anorexic when she was 13. She was suicidal all of my life, pretty much.
Wow.
And it wasn't until I was really, I just kind of was going through the motions. I was just trying to survive, doing what I had to do, putting on whatever face I had to put on. And it wasn't until I was 26, getting ready to have my first child, that I realized that I didn't even know what unconditional love felt like. So
Mm.
it was like this 2x4 on the side of the head, like, oh my God, what else don't I know? Like, what has this literally done to me? Because at that point, I was a doormat. Like, I was the worst people pleaser
Mhm.
ever on the planet, I like to say. I was, I was looking for love in all the wrong places, looking for just any kind of validation, somebody to say, hey, you matter, I hear you. And
Mhm.
it really was messing with me. And I didn't realize it until I was like, oh my God, I'm getting ready to have this cute little baby. And while it sounded really good, it was super scary because I didn't have parenting skills. I mean, and no
Mhm.
parent does, no new parent,
No, yeah, yeah.
but a
There's
lot of
no
them have,
there's no book that you get with your kids saying, "Hey, this is,
yeah, step
this is what you need to
one,
do."
but I also had zero positive role models.
Mm.
And that's where I realized, okay, I got some serious work to do. And of course, there wasn't the internet back then. So I would go down to the Wayne County Public Library and sit on the floor in like stacks of books. Because at that point, I was making all the wrong choices. I was drinking way too much. I mean, I was doing
Mhm.
everything that I thought was making me happy,
Yeah.
um, and just realized it just wasn't. So I knew I had a lot of work
Mhm.
to do. And since then, it's like I threw everything at talk a lot with my hands.
That's fine.
I
Yeah.
I threw everything at the wall that I thought could help me. And what
Hmm.
I realized is there is no one
One
tool.
thing.
There's no one thing. I don't care what people say. Then they say this technology or this modality will cure you in one session. No, because when you come back from that kind of dysfunction, there are so many layers of identity crises and people pleasing and perfectionism and so many mindset things that you have to confront and deal with and find ways to work through and be your best you on the other side of them. And so that was my journey. And through that, I became an NLP practitioner. I wrote some books. I did all the things. And now I feel like I have so many tools in my toolbox. I just want to help people.
Well, that's amazing because I always say too, we're being, working in kind of in the same, from my therapy side, not my coaching side, because with my clients and my coaching, we're really working on moving forward and pushing but we do identity work and defining core self and core values. But I think you make a great, I just want to say that what you've done with, I always say, like, unfortunately, when on the healing side and the therapy side, hurt people unfortunately hurt people, and I hate to say that, but you are one of those people that unfortunately were hurt, but you're turning it into something beautiful and you're helping other people. Like, that is a very special gift that I think you bring to the world.
Well, thank you. And I think it was because I did realize the depth of how generational that kind of trauma is. Like when I finally could look at my mother and say, she didn't know what she was doing. Like she wasn't the reason that her mind literally snapped. It was her parents and her parents' parents. And
Mm.
I go back and I picture my great grandfather, who was actually my grandfather even, who was a child psychiatrist. And my mother was a
Wow.
child psychiatrist. I mean, you're talking, these are doctors. These aren't run of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
mill
yeah. These are,
brown
yeah, they
paper.
know what they're talking about. Yeah.
They know what they're talking about. And so like I kind of joke and say, man, I was taught manipulation by the best. I was taught how to manipulate and how to survive and how to
Who
flip
people that wrote the book about it, pretty much.
literally, yeah. Literally. So I'm like,
Wow.
but it was so generational and I finally was like, enough is enough. Like I didn't want my kids, even though my kids still took the brunt of what happened to me because like yes, I'm the cycle breaker, but their DNA is literally different because of my trauma. And there's nothing we can do about that except let them know and let them find
Bring
their
awareness. Yeah. Bring
to heal
awareness to it.
themselves because
Yeah.
they can change their mindset too.
Yeah.
So,
And I love that you brought that up because I actually was having a conversation with a previous podcast guest like last week about generational trauma, and it is real, and I think as a potential family therapist, I am learning the impact, the ripple effect it can have on a family for generations to generations. Like I was just reading an article for school, and it was about like an Italian family like immigrated to the United States, but the family of origin, like we like to say in family therapy, was, they lived in Italy in the 1800s, like very poverty stricken during a depression, and there was trauma in that system, and it ended up third generations later the daughters ended up suffering from anorexia, and you could trace it back to an unhealthy family myth that they had that literally destroy, like, you see it rippling through. So um I know it's kind of, I don't know what your experience was with that. Was it when you came to that realization, was it I don't know if it gets the word scary, or because I think hearing that word like generational trauma, like that's a heavy word.
yeah.
um so what was your experience like with that?
It was actually more empowering in that
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I want to be that cycle breaker. I want to be that person
Mm-hmm.
that stops. I mean, when even with my clients, sometimes I bring out the science behind, your brain is the way it is. Your prefrontal cortex is wired the way it is because of your trauma. So you're teaching your children different, but if the more you can heal, the more your children can see that. So it was more I mean it was scary because you look at it back too, and I don't know what you believe about this, but I believe that sometimes even the trauma that we suffer is from generations of obviously people we never met,
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah.
past lives, like who knows where it comes from. But to know that there is science and that there are studies and that they're really finding with energy and frequencies and just
Yes.
positivity that you can change. Like, I just did an episode with a lady who helped healed her breast cancer with humor, like literally.
Yeah,
And
oh my God, that's amazing.
and and it's like literally you can change the trajectory of your children and their children and their children. So to me, it was more empowering. I mean, it was, yes, it was kind of like, well, this sucks, but it gave me some understanding as to why. I mean, my mother was an anorexic at 13, and instead of her father, who was a child psychiatrist, sending her to get help, he sent her away to boarding school for 4 years
Mm.
and was like, don't come back until you're better. Well, obviously, she wasn't better. She went to boarding school for 4 years with no help. So, like, it gave me a little more compassion, I guess, too, and some
Mm-hmm.
empathy as far
Yeah.
as, it's very, when you're in the throes of it and your mother is pimping you out to drug dealers, it's very hard to go, well, her dad didn't do the right thing. Like at that point, you're
Mm.
just mad and angry and
Of
confused
course.
and hurt and violated. But when you can look at the science behind it and learn about generational trauma. It does give you a new way to look at relationships in general.
Oh, 100%. And as, I always say, I don't know much, and I would love to learn more about, the science, because I'm always, fascinated with the brain and how we live in this world, right? That is like we're so overstimulated now. Like you can trace it, as you said, it's complex, as you said at the beginning, it's not just one thing. You have to really look deep at yourself when you're doing your healing work and figure out what I always say, figure out what works for you. Some things work for people, other things don't. But and I don't know that from my personal experience, but I would love to, like, I guess, pick your brain, pun intended, about what you've learned about how, I guess, trauma impacts your brain.
Well, I'll give you have you ever heard of the rat and the cherry blossom study?
Yes, I did hear it. I've heard of that
Okay,
study.
so
Yep.
do you mind if I get the shortened
Up.
version for the
Yeah,
people
do the
listening?
yep. Go for it. Go for it
Because
for people that don't know. Yeah.
when you think of, like, again, a lot of people think it's woo. They think, oh, your mother drank and now you're drinking because your mother drank. Well, there's more to it than just your mother drank.
Hmm.
So they did this experiment, and I believe it was Harvard or I don't remember
One of
exactly,
the
Yale or one of the big
a
hospitals,
very prestigious
very prestigious,
university.
very reputable place. And they took a rat and they took cherry blossom scent and they kind of wafted it in front of the rat and let them smell it. And as they did that, they shocked his feet. So they shocked the rat's feet
Hmm.
when they smelled the cherry blossom. So kind of like Pavlov's conditioning with
Yes.
with the dogs and stuff. After a while, all they would have to do is show the rat or let them smell the cherry blossom, and the feet would scurry and they would try to run because they thought they were getting shocked. Like they knew that, they didn't even have to. Does that make sense? So like after a while, they just you just gave them the cherry blossom, and their feet would go like they were being shocked. Well, what they
Hmm.
found is 2 generations later, those baby rats, if they
Still.
smelled cherry blossom, they would freak out and go into a frenzy like they were being shocked. So no grandpa rat said, "Hey, honey, when your
Yeah.
kids are born, let them know not to smell cherry blossom." Like that's not how it went down. It
Yeah.
literally changed it was a trauma
They changed their,
response
the wiring in their brains.
in their nervous system, in their brain, and that's 2 generations. So not that rats are not cute and adorable and smart, but if that can happen to a rat's brain, imagine what
Oh,
the trauma does to ours. So they have shown that, like, children that are neglected and not loved, and their prefrontal cortex actually shrinks and gets smaller. So there are physiological, not
hmm.
just mind. It's not all mind. People go, "Oh, you're depressed. Just think positive things and get out of it."
No, no, yeah, it's not
No.
that easy. If it's honestly, if it was not that easy, I will say we wouldn't have the whole thing. We wouldn't have therapists. We wouldn't have healers. We wouldn't have somatic therapy. We wouldn't have all, if it was that easy.
Exactly. And so it's like, but the more you learn, just, I tell people sometimes if you've never done like any kind of somatic work or,
Hmm.
worked in your body and really learned
Hmm.
to feel your body, just sometimes bouncing up and down,
Okay,
literally,
yeah,
you
like,
bounce for 5 minutes. People call me and they're like, "Oh my God, Tammy, I did it." And I bawled like a baby and I cried and I didn't know why. And it's like, because you're shaking stuff out of your body. Everything,
it's
every
stored in your
experience,
body.
yeah, every experience you have is tucked away somewhere in your nervous system, somewhere in your body. Your
Yeah.
mind, you can lie to your body. I mean, your mind. Your
Oh,
mind can lie to
100%.
you,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
but your body doesn't lie.
I so I know and I love always talking about this, like the physiological relationship, and also from what, and I will say, as a potential mental health professional, we do not learn about the brain at really at all in school. Like there's no like biology course about neurology, and you're right. Our brain, so I always say our brains are wired to and built to just help us survive, like not to thrive, not, and it's a very finicky muscle because I know it's wired to go to the negative first. That's why mindset is so important and staying positive. Because if I have two choices, I know my brain is literally wired to say, nope, you want to pick the negative one first. So that's why it's so important to consciously be like, But you said a great thing about your body because I've experienced this personally. Like, I know if my brain's playing a trick on me, I actually, like, I do go into my body and I ask myself, all right, like, are you calm? Are you, you know what I mean? Or are you feel like, where do you feel like, is my chest tightening up? Because that's my signal to be
Mm.
like, all right, this is like helping me or this is hurting me. Because I know my brain, and also too, our, our brains, forgive me, are like, we have our thinking and our feeling brains, so we have different parts of it, and you know what I mean, like it's a very I don't want to say it's very sophisticated, but also it's, as I said, it's wired for literally survival, where your nervous system is just a different experience.
Yeah, your nervous system is each experience. Your
Mhm.
emotions, what you think, and that's your brain, again, and then it's going to set some physiological reaction into your body, and it's all interconnected. That's why I say you can't, and that's why
Exactly.
I have absolutely zero bad things to say about any modality, period. Because what
Hmm.
works for one person might not work for another person. But like with me, I found with like traditional talk therapy, yes, it was great, but it wasn't everything I needed. Like
Yeah.
you need to go deeper. You need to go more. You need to get it out of your body, And there's so many different ways. There's play therapy. I have a girl that
Hmm.
I know called, her name's Angie Barrett, and she just will, like, I love watching her videos. She's like marching around her office, like feeling big, like feel like a lion, feel like this, because it's just that release and that getting it out of your body. I mean, we're mammals. Look how mammals,
Yeah.
they shake when they're done being afraid or
Yes,
done being,
yes, yeah. When they,
they
yep,
shake it
yep.
out.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of it. Obviously, there is I mean, for those of you who don't haven't read this book, I think it's just a general great, but The Body Keeps the Score by
Mm-hmm.
Bessel was it Vanderkolk? Bessel Vanderkolk?
Medical. Yep.
It is like, I mean, I'm reading, I'm actually taking a trauma class next semester, and I know that's the book we're reading. I've read it, of course, but it's true. Your body, you hold that in your body. So doing practices like meditation or just deep breathing, or as you said, literally shaking it out,
Mm.
is so important. Because if you keep that all, and that's another thing that I think I would love to get your opinion on. And I think that I'm just discovering this because I work with a lot of people that I like to call and are in survival mode. They're functioning and they're not feeling. So they're just like going through the motions of life and like kind of living on autopilot. And I kind of have to be like, all right, like, how are you feeling? And they're like, wait, like, I'm like, you're not living. Like, if you're in that state. And I personally feel that if you're in a state of survival mode for too long and stress, that turns into trauma.
Well, and just, it's like I say, every bad experience is you can take a traumatic event, but as long as it gets processed and dealt with and released, it doesn't
Yes,
become trauma. It's when it
absolutely.
doesn't get focused and dealt with and released.
Exactly.
But when you talk about, like, I mean, if people come to you and they're just already, they're past that hypervigilant, it's like your cortisol goes for so long, right? And
Yep.
it goes and goes and goes, and you run, and cortisol, for the people not that are listening or whatever, is your stress hormone. So
Yes.
it's what's given to
Yep.
us that is great to protect us, to make us run, to make us fight, to make us do what we have to do. But if we stay there, and especially
Mhm.
kids that come from a traumatic background, they stay there. And then what happens is your cortisol feeds into your adrenals. Well, once you get to that point where your adrenals are like, whoa, I can't process any more cortisol, can't do it.
Mhm.
Then it's like you go from this hyper, so it stops producing. It just
Mhm.
says, nope, no more. I've done it. I've been doing it for 25 years. That's where you're literally over the other top, where now you're in complete and total shutdown. It's like, because you stop producing it, and then that's your exhaustion sets in. That's when you're just, I mean, ultra, ultra, ultra fatigue. And that's where all of your other systems really at that point are, I want to say whacked, but they are.
No, I mean, and it's so funny, and I love that you brought up like nervousness because it's so your like it's throughout your whole body, and I feel like it doesn't. I'm trying my best to do the work and in the field to just have people focus on their nervous system health, and their emotional regulation. You made a great point about processing emotions. We are live in such a quick, I know, like, it's also generational. I know the younger generations are really into sitting with feelings, but when people are going through something, the first thing I say, as actually as a therapist, I'm like, I know it might feel uncomfortable, but sit with it. Like, sit with the feeling. Like, and I it's a skill. Emotional regulation is something that you can learn and you can adapt to, but I always say emotions demand to be felt.
Yes.
So, it's like good and bad. You
Hmm.
have to allow them the space to process themselves, because if you don't, and you either suppress them, they are going to come back in projection, or, in some form that is, if it's a negative emotion, that might be impacting your relationships. Like, if you ever snap at somebody, like, I get it. Like, like, sometimes you get frustrated, like, whatever, on, like, road rage on the road, you know what I mean? And then you're kind of testy, like, but knowing yourself, I think, is the most important, and knowing how your body reacts to certain things. Because I'll share with my audience before. I suffer from anxiety, and I know when, like, I'm getting anxious, like, I don't, I don't want to ever get to that point of, like, breakdown. So I know my body well enough to know, like, all right, Danielle, you're feeling anxious right now, ground yourself, like, and then I take that time. But I feel like we live in a society, unfortunately, that, like, we're always like, go, 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 that people should not be getting to the point of, like, mental collapse,
Right.
you know?
Yep. And it's because, like you said, it's you can say to yourself, okay, I'm getting a little anxious now. It's a normal feeling. This too
Mm-hmm.
shall
Yeah.
pass. Let me take 3 deep breaths. Let me rethink about why. Let me just step back a minute, do
Mm-hmm.
what you got to do. But yeah, if you don't, and I love this, what did you just say? Emotions demand to be felt. Like
Emotions demand
it
to be
demand
felt.
to be expressed or whatever.
Yeah.
And because if you don't, you're just tucking it away. And I always talk about the invisible backpack that we
Mm-hmm.
carry around that has a million different things in it that we've never dealt with. And
Yeah.
you don't see it. It's behind you, but the sucker weighs about 2,000
Oh,
pounds.
oh yeah, it has
And
it has everything from history to present day to, like, generational stuff to, and honestly,
mhm.
probably even subconscious things,
Oh, absolutely.
you know?
That's all your why, just, and that's, I tell people that's the quickest thing is when you have those feelings. I think that's the biggest tip I try to explain to people is when you have those feelings, it's that negative coming at you, that other voice where you're just beating yourself up at, why do I think that way? Why do I do that? Just stop, even if you write it down and then go
Hmm.
home and journal it or talk about it or
Yeah.
get it out of your body. I know I was not good for a long time about journaling because my mother
Hmm.
used to traditionally rip open, my brother and my mother would rip open my diaries and read everything I wrote. And then my mother might slap me or beat me or
Hmm.
whatever for something I wrote in a private diary. So it was very hard for me. But I was like, it's so important to get it out. So then I started like this ritual of writing in journals when I would feel something and not quite know why. I would go home and be like, okay, well, today, somebody said this and it made me a little cringy and gave me a little sick feeling in my stomach. And then I would write it. And then I would rip it up when I would go to the ocean or to a river, and
Yeah.
I would just put it in and let it go. Because
Oh, I think that's such a
that
beautiful exercise.
that was my release because I couldn't keep my journals around and I still have a hard time. I still rip them up sometimes because I'm like, nah, I don't want anybody reading this. Not that anybody would, but I got to get it out because you have to get it out. But
Yeah.
then you don't have to necessarily hold on to it. It's the same thing if you're so angry with your mother, write her a letter. You don't have to mail it.
Yep.
Writing
Yep.
in a letter does the same thing as actually writing it and mailing it up here.
Yes, yeah, like, as you said, like, you're doing something to release it from your body and putting it. That is a very big therapy, actually, a therapeutic tool. Writing letters. Even I've colleagues of mine have, that they're in therapy with their mom, their dad, whatever, their family, and they write a letter, um, to the person, obviously outside of therapy, and then what you do with that letter in the room is a tool to help the family heal. So I love that like, and as we keep saying, it's whatever works for you. Like for instance,
Right.
you like I personally have really benefited. I know if I like, I mean, I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid. Talk therapy really works for me. Like talking it out to a professional, just that expression, just to process it. Like I process my emotions best when I kind of talk it out.
Right.
And that's why I will always and be an advocate for myself in my life for therapy. I get if everybody, everybody has their own ways, you know what I mean? But I think that helps a lot for me personally. Because also too, a therapist is somebody who isn't emotionally connected to your life. So,
Right.
they can give you, and then there is, they give you their perspective and really ask you to dig deep because I'm sure,
Right.
as you know, doing your inner work, like this is work. It's like you
Right.
don't just like, I think we live in a society too, and we talk about this all the time in my classes, is like everybody just wants that magic pill. Like, let me just take this and and we are overprescribed. I could do a whole podcast about that, but
Yeah, I was going to say that's a
we'll
whole nother
digress.
season.
We'll digress on that. But this is work. And I'm not and not and I think when people hear that, they're like, oh, but like you have, if you put in the work though, how you feel when you come out of it is like indescribable to me. Like you just, when you get to that point in your healing journey where you have done the work and you're like, all right, and you can walk through the world with confidence, with worth, it feels amazing.
Yep. And, I heard one time a psychologist, and I say it a lot in my podcast, but she said to a good exercise to see kind of where you're at with a certain situation, because we always say, oh, I've dealt with that. I've dealt with that. I'm
Yeah, like
better. I'm good.
yeah, like yeah, I
Yeah.
pushed it under the rug. Yeah.
But, or even I talked it out in therapy, I did
Mm-hmm.
that. But then she would say, picture your favorite food or your favorite, I don't know, song or your favorite
Mm-hmm.
puppy and feel how that feels in your body. And
Mm.
so you're like warm and fuzzy. Like I can picture myself wrapped up on the beach and
Yeah.
like just warm and fuzzy. And then say to yourself, whatever the issue is. So maybe you're working on feeling worthy and just
Mm-hmm.
say to yourself, hey, I deserve all good things, all of them. And then sit there with that. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you're not quite there, you're going to get that physiological. Your shoulders will go. I can just watch people and they'll go, oh, I deserve all good things. And then their shoulders will go up and their head will
And
go forward.
they're like, like yeah,
I'm like,
like doubt will come through their body. Yeah.
yep. And I will, and then I'll say, like, how'd that feel? And they're like, not so good. And I'm like, okay,
Mm.
so
We still have work to do.
we still have a little bit of work to do. But it's a good test because not everybody, I used to say there's like three reasons people don't go to therapy. They don't have the time, they don't have the money, and they don't have the guts. But, it's like they, they don't, it's like that stigma.
I
But
know. I
there's
hate.
so many things you can do at home to start to really,
Yeah.
and it's just now there's so much out there, and of course you want good information, but I mean community is the best. So if like you're not ready for a one-on-one therapist but you grew up with an incredibly abusive household, join ACA, like Adult
Hmm.
Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. Join a group. Just get with the groups of people that make you feel like you're not alone, because
Absolutely.
I don't care what your story was, it's happened before.
Yeah. And you make a
Or-
great point about, and I think like just I'm thinking of society now. It like the way, so actually I'm reading this book about, it's called Bad Therapy. And the poor, I forgive me, Abigail, oh, I'm gonna forget her name, Abigail something. Oh, I think I'm forgetting her name. Abigail Schreier, excuse me. And she's a journalist. And her stance on therapy is actually interesting because I like to see different perspectives, that it's all about children and how she feels that, and I'm not through the whole book, so I don't want to like paraphrase or say wrong things, but the whole concept is basically that the mental health professionals are negatively contributing to to the kids being in a mental health crisis. The system is contributing to it because if the system was working correctly and if mental health professionals were doing the right work people would have less mental health issues, not more. And it just seems that it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And that kind of by like indulging on our problems, we're like creating problems. So like a person that has depression, let's just say this, like talking about it more isn't helping. It's actually hurting because we're talking more about depression and not about the problem, which there are models of therapy to help that. And this person is not a therapist. She's a journalist, but I just find it interesting in the times that we live in that they're like, and I love that you said like breaking the stigma because there is no shame in getting help. And I think therapy, the word therapy is like very like, oh, go see a therapist, but like walking on the beach is therapeutic. Cooking is therapeutic. Like, let's break the convention of using the word therapy as like something you just need to do like with a therapist. Like,
Right.
and like I love that you also mentioned community. That is a huge, I've been seeing a lot about because like one of my like values is just like acts of service, and the quickest way to actually, make a positive change in your mental health is actually to help another human being.
Mm-hmm. Because you have a purpose. Yes, it's
Exact like, and it's
mm-hmm.
amazing. I'm seeing a lot more like, and I'm like, I was like, I love that because I feel like we live in a little bit of a society. It's like me, 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 me. And we need to get back to that we, like
Right.
the we society. Because I mean, and I get it. But I'm also a fan of like, you have to like the metaphor of the airplane on, the airplane mask on, you have to put your mask on first before you can help somebody else. So if your cup isn't full, don't pour into somebody else. However, pouring, as you said, having that purpose will change
Mm-hmm.
your mindset and your body, and that's a very quick thing to do. It could be something as simple as holding a door for somebody. It doesn't have to be
I was
this.
I was just gonna say, like I tell people, just in your daily life, tell people to have a blessed day.
Yeah.
When you watch what the light that you light up in a room, when you say, well, have a blessed day to that cashier, that 65-year-old cashier that does not want to be bagging groceries at 65 years old, make their day a little brighter because then you're going to be like, oh, I made her
Yeah,
feel
like yeah,
good.
I made an
And
impact.
right. So like, and when you do that and you go, oh, that was heartwarming, like she really appreciated that, then wow. And then how that starts to re-trigger your own brain or rewire your own brain is, wow, I am a good person. I can do things for people. I do make a difference. I am lovable because
Yep.
especially when you come, going back to the whole growing up with adulthood or going into adulthood after going through childhood trauma, it doesn't matter where you come from, what happened or what the circumstances were, the bottom line is I'm not worthy and I'm not good enough. Period.
Mm, yeah,
And
that.
until you get that out of your head and not even out of your head, out of your body and out of your subconscious mind, you won't be able to go forward.
Yeah, you make a great point about self-worth and about well, I mean, we're talking very therapeutic, like core wounds. Like that is a core wound that you're not it's funny you mentioned that because and I'll share it because I'm an open book. I've done a lot of work with my therapist because I'm adopted. So, and adopted to a loving, welcoming family that accepted me, no, and even my extended family except me and my brother. My brother is also adopted too. We're not from the same family. We're not biological really related, but we went through the system as well. But like when I mean like picture perfect story, right? Like everybody accepted us. We were unconditionally loved. My parents did everything, like they were the best parents. But because of that, just that simple moment of my life when I was detached from my birth mother at birth, I have done a lot of work with my therapist to realize that I have an abandonment wound. And that's what I tell myself because that action of you know, my mother giving me away, which they did it to give me a better life. I understand that consciously. But that small thing gives me an I'm not lovable wound because my mother gave me away at birth.
And then, yeah. And then if, people are just like, oh, no, that's not a thing. Well, then go back to the DNA and go back to the fact that you are 100% connected with that mom. And literally that DNA connection doesn't break. It just
And
doesn't.
exactly, oh yeah, exactly. Like biologically, I am and this person wasn't also I'm a nature and nurture experiment too. But you're right, biologically, and that's another thing that I think is unfortunate for me. Like, not obviously medical history is important, but like generationally, while yes, like I'm in a different system now, but historically, I don't know really anything about the past generations of my family. So
Right.
something that comes up in me, I don't know if it like, I mean, I have a good sense of who I am now and obviously the environment and all that stuff, but like I really have no family history
Right.
of true family of origin work, but I consider my family, the system that I came into as my like true family of origin, but it is a disservice for me, unfortunately, if I really do want to dig that deep because as you said, like these and there's a theorist in family therapy, Bowenian family therapy, that literally he says, and when I read this, I was shocked that and he looks at transgenerational he's a transgenerational theorist and therapist, or he's dead now, but his theory is that even emotional reactions, like how you react to something, can be passed down from generation to generation. Like it's
Hmm.
crazy how nuanced it can be.
I mean, it changes your DNA.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. But yeah, no. But the good thing is that it can all be rewired. So like
Oh
if you
yeah,
go
yeah,
to an
yeah, yeah,
Akashic Records reader and have someone read your records, I mean, you can find out all
yeah,
that stuff if you
yeah,
really want to go like the energy, the whole past life regression. You can do
yes,
all that
yes.
stuff. But at the end of the day, it's like, look at you, you're moving forward not knowing all that stuff. And
Oh,
so
absolutely.
there's hope for, that's a good thing to know.
Well,
So,
I think, what, and that's what I think, like I always say with like my coaching and therapy, right? Like in therapy, we're looking like really inward, where we're looking really in. But with coaching and by coaching people, we're looking forward. And, I always say, like, I like to use the metaphor of like, we're all cars. Like, and for some reason, like unfortunately sometimes we have the luxury of like going into the shop, stopping and fixing something before we move, but we're moving pretty much all the time. So sometimes you do have to fix the things while you're moving forward, you know.
right.
And I
Yep.
just do want to applaud you because I forget what they call them. Forgive me. There's a TED talk about them, about generational trauma, like cycle breakers.
They usually just call it cycle breakers.
Cycle
People that
breakers,
have, I
like,
mean, if you go back, I think we went back one time 4 generations or five or six generations on my mother's side. I couldn't find a relative that was not an alcoholic. Couldn't find
wow.
one. Just
I
like finding diaries and, fights and
Yeah,
knowing the
yeah.
divorce rate. I mean, people didn't get divorced back in the 1911. My family did.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like,
Wow.
my grandmother was born in 1921 and had to get an annulment to come to my first wedding so that she could take communion at my first wedding. And,
Wow.
so she was divorced in 1930 something and justifiably. But that wasn't even a thing.
Yeah, that's crazy. No, but I just want to like applaud you, and because that is a very brave thing to do.
Well,
It's a
thank you.
very, and a lot, like I think, like it's because it was clearly a very conscious decision you made when you had kids. And normally, I think normally it does happen when like you have kids. I feel like when you become a parent, that's when you're like, oh wow, like this is the responsibility I have to potentially impact future generations. And
Right.
I just applaud you for being that person in your family because there's a saying, either you repeat it or you repair it.
Yep.
And you're doing, an amazing work as in your professional life, but also as a human being and for your family too.
Well, thank you. You're sweet.
Oh yeah, no. But yeah, Tammy, this was a wonderful, wonderful episode. I could talk about this like literally all day. I could talk
All
about
day.
you'll come on maybe for another episode in the future. I could talk about this all day because it's like the world I live in. But thank you so much for being a guest. And if Tammy's website is tammyvincent.com if you're interested to learning more. But I don't know if you wanted to share maybe your social media handles or anywhere where you kind of have the most engagement so people can find you.
I'm actually redoing my website, but you can go there and just reach out to me, and then, or you have a link to my podcast, which is called Adult Child of Dysfunction. There's courses you can take. There's just reach out to me. I like to talk. I'm very into energy. I like finding out where people are energetically. So I
Mm.
do free voice scans for people where I can see where they're at
Ooh.
energetically. So you can reach out for that. Like there's just whatever. I'm an open book. I have no secrets, and I really like to just meet people where they're at and talk to anybody anywhere. So I'm
Awesome.
pretty flexible. So
Yeah,
yes,
and
thank
I'll put your like your website in the show notes and so everybody can knows where to meet, where to find you. But as always, thanks for another episode, everybody, and have a great day.